Hi and welcome to Faith Talks. In today's episode, we'll look at the issue and the challenges of homelessness. In the studio with me today, I have Malika Bediako, who is the women's ministry leader for the Adventist Church in South England and has experience working with people who are homeless. And joining her today is Pat Walton, who has for years led out in ministries and programs to help the homeless in London. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Pat, for many years you've been doing something called a soup run.
Yes.
Tell me, what is a soup run and what does it do?
A soup run is for people on the streets in London that we run from our church in Watford. We go every Friday night and we fill the minibus with people and with clothes, with food, with an urn full of hot water, and we take toiletries, and we take sandwiches and fruit and biscuits and cake and anything that we think would make somebody on the street in London more comfortable.
So for how many years have you been doing this?
Almost 30, I think.
That's a long time.
It is a long time.
And before we get more into talking about your experiences, Malika, can you tell me a little bit about how would you define homelessness?
Homelessness comes into two categories. We have invisible homeless people, and these are usually sometimes young people are still living at home with their parents, or adults that are actually living with a friend in their flat or their home. And that's why they're invisible, because they're actually living somewhere. And then we have our homeless people are living on the street, that we sometimes see and don't see on the streets underneath Oxford Street, for instance. They would be in the doorways of shops in Oxford Street. They may be outside your local supermarket. They may be sleeping in your small parks in your area. But because they're invisible and you don't see them, you don't know that they're homeless.
But tell me a little bit about, for me, homelessness would only be the people on the street, because surely if you're living with your parents, how can you be homeless?
We do have in the UK at this time a large proportion of couples that are living with their parents. You know, for one reason or the other, we're short of housing in the UK at the moment. And so therefore, they're unlikely to get housing unless a lot of our local authorities have point systems. And until they have a large proportion of points, they're sleeping in the attic in somebody's house, maybe with two children and a husband and wife at the same time. So we do have a growing homeless problem, whether we see them on the street or they're not seen.
And Pat, for 30 years you've been going, and do you see a change?
Yes.
Tell me about the change you're seeing.
I think when we first started, and it started in a committee of young people, that they wanted to do practical Christianity. And so we decided that we would send our youth minister off with the Salvation Army to find out how to do a soup run for the homeless in London. He came back and reported, the kids were excited, and so we started it. And at that time, we made only soup. We made homemade soup. 2 big insulated urns full of homemade soup and rolls and butter. And we took clothing and blankets. And we saw a large number of people, over 100 people, every Friday night. But gradually, we have got to know them, and we have got to know their needs. And now we differentiate a little bit. We make instant soup, we make tea and coffee and hot chocolate, and we take sandwiches ready-made, some with cheese, some with turkey or chicken in them, very plain, brown and white bread. And we take cake and fresh fruit and chocolate biscuits and crisps. And we take cold drinks. And we feel we are filling a different sort of need. We have come to understand their needs much better. But there aren't quite as many as we saw at the beginning. And the age difference is a little bit higher. We saw a lot of young people, glue sniffers and people like that, a lot of drunk people. but we don't see so much of that now.
So you're suggesting that the age population of those who are homeless, who are living on the street, has gone up?
I am.
So
I'm not saying it's too much, but we don't see so much of the younger people, the teenagers. We see some, one or two come, and often when they come now, they are starving. I hate to say that, but they are.
Has homelessness become a lifestyle choice, Malika?
I think there are very few people that would choose to be homeless. And I still believe that there are some that don't. I remember about 25 years ago, I worked with Westminster City Council. And one of the things that was a part of my job description was to get homeless people into housing. And I remember, because I didn't know anything about homeless people, that we got this gentleman a flat in Soho. And we went in there and we thought, well, if he's got a flat and he's got the vacuum cleaner and he's got the carpet and everything like that, that he's going to want to live in a really nice, clean space. And we found out very quickly that because he had only lived out on the streets for a number of years, the floor was littered with dog ends of cigarettes and everything, because it took time for him to change his behaviour. He was lonely in that flat on his own. It was a place for him to be, but he was lonely, so he would go back outside and find some of his friends, and some nights he wouldn't stay at home. He would actually stay with them because he felt comfortable. We have found out at the Advent Centre as well, there are some people that have flats, have housing, but at Christmas they want to be with people, so they come and stay with us in the shelter. So there's different degrees of homelessness, and it's what we see as normal life. They don't always see it that way, and they need that companionship. We all need companionship, and it's for us to be able to do that. Pat on a Friday night, us and some of the other churches in London on a Sunday.
So you're saying, to some extent, once you get into that life, you kind of might not miss the coldness or sleeping rough, but you miss the companionship that you build up.
And that's one of the important things we feel we do on a Friday night. Okay, it's not long that we're with them, but we talk with them and they enjoy the chat. We talk about all sorts of things, football, anything. The men are very good at talking about that. But we have built up a friendship with them. They know when we're going to come, what time.
And I think you're actually saying one of my early experiences when I was studying here in the 80s was somebody came and asked me for money, a homeless guy in Waterloo Station. Yes. And, we were a group and we said, sure, we'll go, we'll give you some money so you can go and buy a meal. And he's like, no, go with me and buy the meal. And we're like, okay. So we went with him and bought the meal. Yes. And he said, would you mind just staying and talking while I'm eating? Yes. And that, I think, was the first time it just dawned on me that it's more than just giving money, is that loneliness as well that comes
We never
across.
give them money, give them money. Because that's our choice, I suppose. What we feel, we want to give them the items. And often some of them get rooms and they get, as you said, shelters, or you provide them flats. But they need equipment. We've taken many things in the minibus to give them for their rooms.
So tell me, yes, so some of them are slightly homeless but still have some form of accommodation. You do a shelter over Christmas.
Yes.
Why do you do that over Christmas?
Because you know something, we all want company at Christmas. We all need companionship at Christmas. And basically it was the two guys that were homeless that were on our management committee that said to us that it would be really good when they saw the Advent Centre if you could open this up as a shelter. Now, some of us, not all of us, some of us have worked with Crisis, which is an organisation, a charitable organisation that opens up at Christmas. It was my one of my eldest daughter about 8 years ago said, would it be wonderful for us to go and work in a shelter? And the rest of us in the home thought she was a bit potty. But we decided, yes, it would be good to do that one Christmas so as to give to somebody else. And so we opened up the homeless shelter. And it was mainly the people that we met on the Sunday. We go and get them in a minibus. and taxis this year just gone as well, because we had an increase, and they come to the shelter from Christmas Eve, and this year they were there until New Year's Day, and they just love the friendship. We have computers there for them, and we have to time them what they do. We have a film room where they can watch film and they can watch TV. We have a games room. They have tea and coffee on tap 24 hours a day for them. They love the food. They love the companionship. There was one woman they tell you their stories and you can try and help them along the way. There was one woman, she was reading, I'm going to shut up in a moment, self-help book. And I said to her, she goes, I want to change my life, Malika. And she actually had her partner there in the shelter with her, who we realised later on was very ill. But I spoke to her for 2 days, and everybody said, Malika, she thinks that you're the most positive person that she's ever met in the last 10 years. Because I said, if you want to do this, you can do that. And I still keep in contact with her. And she sends me messages through people that go and do the feeding. And she's making her way out of that situation. But slowly, this is somebody that had a house, had a job, a career and everything, and lost everything.
And you're actually touching on a subject there, because for many people will perceive homelessness is a result of drug or alcohol. But you're actually talking about or alluding to somebody who had a well-functioning life suddenly ending up on the street.
Yes.
And you, Pat, say you don't give money because you don't know what people are going to use it for.
Yes.
Tell me, are homeless people not all mentally ill or drug addicts?
No.
What other types? Why are they homeless then? Because that's, I think, people's perception.
We must remember that when the recession came in, a lot of people lost their jobs. And it's surprising some of the people that are homeless, in one sense, because they're the people that had the homes. They owned their homes. A lot of homes were repossessed. And they had nowhere to go. And so they ended up on the street. They had possessions. They had lives. We had somebody this year that was, who used to lecture. And we wondered why he was in the homeless shelter. But there was nowhere else for him to go. He lost his status. He lost quite a few things in his life. Very, very eloquent. But he's homeless.
We had one too. He would spout Shakespeare to us. Beautiful voice. But you never ask them, why are you here? We never do that. It's for them. When you make friends with them, they talk. One man told us that he was on the street because he went to home and he found his wife in bed with somebody else, his best friend. He said, I just flipped. I walked away from it. My children, I left them all. He said, yes, I regret, but he said, I couldn't possibly cope with it. And they can't cope with the responsibility. You talked about going back, giving them a room and so on. They can't take that responsibility. It's very hard for them, having been on the street, to then be given a room that they have then got to look after. It's too much for them.
But I would have assumed, and many people watching might also assume, that we live in a Western, well-to-do country. We hear of benefits and we hear how the government is giving out eons of money for benefits. And surely there must be somewhere that, that would be enough for people to live, not ending up on the street.
But you're not getting benefits unless you live somewhere.
That's right.
Unless you have an address.
Yes.
And your address can't be Temple Road or Waterloo Bridge. You have to have a physical accommodation. And if you do not have that, then you can't get benefits. Yes, the government are giving out benefits, but they need people to be actually situate in somewhere so as to be able to attain those benefits. So it's not as easy as people think it is for a homeless person. There's one homeless man I'll tell you about that myself and my children looked after for years. Well, the children. What happened was every Saturday night I would take them to Tesco's near to where I live in Islington. And there was this man that was outside and they would offer to buy him food and they bought him food continuously. And then one day it was coming to winter and the kids said to me, "Mummy, can't we buy him a hat and a scarf and gloves?" And I was thinking, what are you talking about? But then we bought the hat and the gloves. They took their money, we put it together, and we went and bought them the hat and gloves. For years we had a relationship with him. I knew where the park was that he was in. He knew when I wasn't at home, because he'd say to me, "You weren't at home this weekend because so-and-so daughter wouldn't have dressed the way she did if you were at home." He became my guardian angel. And the children began to build a relationship with him. He wouldn't go into a hostel. And I kept on saying to him, "Why won't you go into a hostel?" He said, "Because there's drugs there and there's alcohol." And he didn't want to get into that. He told us his story why he was homeless. And, it was sad. This was somebody that had a career. He was a painter and decorator. And his stuff was actually in a house round the corner from us. So if he picked up jobs, he would do the jobs. But he just didn't have anywhere to live. They promised him, homeless projects promised him they would get him housing year after year after year. And he never got it until about 6 years later, he got moved to Manchester.
Because I think that's a continual debate. Should churches get involved, or is it the government's responsibility? And what do you think, Pat? Should churches get involved?
Well, I evidently do. I do believe we should be involved. I mean, as I said, we started off, young people wanted to show practical Christianity. And from that, it's just gone on and on. And I do believe that we should, it's not just the food, the clothes, or anything like that. It is the chat. It's the friendships you make. We've even taken bicycles to London. One guy wanted a bicycle, and one of the guys said, "Yeah, I'll give him a bicycle, take it up." But you mentioned Christmas. We do Christmas bags now for them. Originally, we gave out a Christmas card, and the guy said, "I haven't had a Christmas card in many, many years." So from that, it led on, and we do these brown paper bags, carrier bags, and we put, new socks in there, packet of tissues, toiletries, and chocolate, and new hankies maybe, and new socks. It's lovely. They love it.
But Pat, why do you, 30 years is a long time to do something. What makes you as a person do it, and what makes you continue?
Because I feel there's a need, and I think also there are people from the community who want to come and help us to do this. And I think we are helping them to do something they've wanted to do. Just on Friday last week, I was in Halfords with my husband, and I saw these sleeping bags, and I thought, I'm going on the run tonight. I'm going to buy some sleeping bags. We had blankets, we had duvets, but they like sleeping bags. So I bought 3 sleeping bags, took them to the counter, and in the conversation, I just mentioned to the girl, I'm taking these for the homeless in London. And she just quietly turned to me and she said, "That's something I've always wanted to do, but never found anybody to go with." And I said, "Well, if you want my name and number, you can call me and you can come with me." I go, it goes every Friday night, feel free. And that happens. An elderly lady who always gives us at Christmas, she's over 80, she gives us Easter eggs at Easter. And she told me when she went to get the Easter eggs she'd ordered from Sainsbury's, the young boy who handed them over said, she of course told him why she was buying them. And he said he would like to do that. It's just people want to help other people. And I think that's a good reason to carry on.
Pat's just said about that story. Where the Advent Centre is this year just gone, we put letters through all the neighbours' doors to let them know that that's what we're doing over the Christmas period in case they see people outside. And this couple came and they said it was a fantastic thing that we were doing, and they handed over money to us to be able to help. And then they also came on the Boxing Day and they said, "Well, we're here next year." Just people that we just put through the door. And then another family across the road said, "Anything that you want, knock on our door and we will give it to you because we think it's a fantastic job you're doing." Like Pat's saying, we're a door that is open for ordinary people, for people that want to help, to come in. but they also found out more about us. Because they want to know, why do we want to do such a thing over Christmas or even during the year? Why do we want to do it? And we tell them, I've had incidents where we've gone into shops and said, that we want X, Y, and Z. And they said, we'll give it to you. We got loads of bread to last us for the whole of the 2 weeks. We got fruit that was just coming from shops that because people wanted to help. I believe that we are a helping society, and there are people out there that want to help. And it's a wonderful joy to see that you can be able to help somebody. And our young people, Pat has brought that up again and again. I think it's a wonderful thing to get our young people to do because they're doing something outside of themselves.
That's right.
And so therefore they're giving to somebody that has less than themselves.
And it sounds very good, but can it not be a little bit scary? If, when you see people who are homeless, a lot of people would choose to walk by or ignore and not see and just maybe step a little bit further away. And if you're a little bit scared, what would you recommend? Because you might think, I would like to do something, but I'm a bit scared. I don't know where to start. I'm a little bit nervous. I feel a bit vulnerable. What would your words be to somebody like that?
It's very interesting you saying that, because where we park in Lincoln's Inn Field, we drive round the park. The park was designated for the homeless, and then the Borough Council decided, that enough was enough. So they turned them out. So they're actually on the street around Lincoln's Inn. And people have to walk through us because we put tables against the brick wall to serve the clothes. Then we have another table for the drinks and the food and so on. And they often walk through. And they would say, what are you doing? What is it for? And then often when they've had parties inside, one of the offices there, the solicitors or barristers or office of surgeons, they come and give us party food left over. Would you like this? Would you like to use this?
What can we do? I mean, I might not feel comfortable inviting somebody to my home. I might feel I'm in a vulnerable state. I want to do something for the homeless population. I want to help both alleviate the problem, but just as a serve as a Christian. What would you encourage somebody like me then, for example, to do?
There's a list in each one of the boroughs of the churches and other organisations that do work with the homeless. Get hold of your local authority and find out which faith organisations or which other organisations that are doing, and just volunteer. Just go and say, I'm willing to volunteer. That little bit of time that you give, this is going to sound like a cliche, but will be a blessing to you in so many ways. So many times we don't need to be frightened of them because they're frightened of us. Sometimes they're frightened to even ask for something because they don't know the reaction that they're going to get. But really and truly, just try. Try it once and you'll end up doing it again and again and again.
And I think Pat is a testimony to that. Tried once.
30 years.
30 years on. She's still bringing young people.
Yes.
But let me ask you here before we close, what has this done to your faith? Has working and volunteering and feeding the homeless done anything for you personally on your faith journey? Yes.
Because we do, on occasions, we have opportunity to pray with them. They have asked, we don't push it, but they have been in conversation with somebody and said, will you pray for me? And yes, we would. And I think, and before we leave on our trip, on a Friday night, 8:30, we form a circle, the team forms a circle before they get in the minibus and we pray.
And what about you, Malika?
I think the people that come to us at Christmas in particular, they know that we're faith-based. Yes. And we're blessed as well that we have choirs coming in from different churches that volunteer to come and sing for them. Yeah. So they really enjoy the singing. This year, they actually, we had an Advent Has Talent evening, and they actually joined in some of the singing that they hear. It's, it's wonderful to be able to pass on faith in a different way. Yeah. Also, they watched, we were a bit skeptical in the beginning about showing them Christian films, but they've watched The Passion of the Christ, and they've watched Samuel, and they've watched other films that are out there. And actually, we went in the television room, and they were all just gazing at the screen to see what it is. So I think it's faith in action. It's faith in action. Sometimes we can be stalwart and sitting in our own little churches and doing any denomination, but we can get out there together and work. And I think that's what God was all about. Jesus went out and he touched people, no matter where they were and no matter who they were. So we can do the same thing, and it's a wonderful thing to be able to know that you've helped one person. Just their thank yous is enough.
And I want to say thank you to both of you for joining me in the studio today and discussing such an important topic. And thank you for watching today, and look forward to seeing you again next time.